There'll be a budget in the fall. In the short term, it's a very short parliamentary session that is coming up. The speech from the throne is on the 27th, as people know. The House is due to rise under the House's rules by the 20th of June, so it's really 3 weeks. We have some very clear priorities, which, as you know from those who followed the campaign, those who followed my remarks, those who followed my opening press conference, would include the federal government taking all the steps it can to help create one Canadian economy out of 13, in addition, initiatives such as the middle-class tax cut. But there will be a budget in the fall.
Yeah, according to Mark Carney, that's from yesterday. He, of course, was in Rome with many other world leaders, meeting the Pope again, and talked about something that someone in his own cabinet said was not going to happen. That was François-Philippe Champagne a couple of days ago. James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, I don't know, do we give him credit for not wasting any time correcting this, or?
Listen, I don't know about you. I've had this really kind of nagging feeling ever since the cabinet was sworn in that there was this big, fat, Moby Dick-sized loose end somewhere that hadn't been tied up. You don't rumble a guy like Carlos Lateo to come back into federal politics. Everyone thinks he's going to be groomed for the finance minister's job and then not use him. Something is going on, Aaron, and if nothing else, the contradictions that we are seeing, my God, on an almost daily basis from this government suggest either Mark Carney had better get himself a new entourage, some new advisors, certainly some new communications people, or he should start listening to them, because clearly the message is not getting through, whether it is, as you point out, a full-blown federal budget as opposed to an economic update. And yeah, there's a difference, i.e. one's a confidence issue, that I know that for a fact. The other issue, of course, is the report that we saw this past weekend saying that Canada had quietly dropped most of its tariffs against the United States, which has since been contradicted by the government. They're saying, no, 70% of them are still in effect. We just took the other ones down for humanitarian reasons. Whatever. You just get the impression, Aaron, that they're making this message up as they go along, that they were supposed to be going one way and all of a sudden they're going another, and they're not really sure which way this path is going to lead. But I'm telling you, if they start screwing Canadians around on a daily basis, saying one thing and then contradicting themselves within 24 hours' time, any goodwill that they have accumulated over the course of this campaign, and certainly and this is a real issue here. It's not a matter of political confidence or as in a confidence vote. The confidence of Canadians, Aaron, has got to be ironclad with the Prime Minister in this particular instance. We all know, most of us know, we're dealing with a completely erratic lunatic in the U.S., in the Oval Office. We understand we have to be able to move quickly and react to that way. Sometimes you have to be careful about what we say in public. But that's what you say to Donald Trump. That's what you say to J.D. Vance when you meet him at the Vatican and say, we work together. It'd be better for trade that we all work together, blah, 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 blah. I'm not putting any credence into any of that statement. That's just diplomacy. But when Mark Carney is talking to the Canadian people, no, not Mike Myers behind, a fake rink bench, okay, talking about keeping elbows up, but talking to Canadians about their economic future and which way this government is going to go, either have the spine to say, I don't know, and I'll get back to you, or say, listen, it's going to be A, B, and C. But between this contradiction with Champagne over the issue of a federal budget, between the clear amateur night contradiction by Steve Guilbeault, who used to be the environment minister, but now is the minister of cultural identity, but who's still, spouting off about pipelines and how he doesn't think there's any need for them. I'm very sorry. A cabinet is like a company, and Mark Carney should understand that. Mark Carney knows what it is to be a CEO. He knows what it is to be a governor of 2 national banks. There is a chain of command. It's not being respected, or at least it appears it is not being respected. It seems cabinet ministers are doing one of two things. Either they are being misinformed by Carney's office, or they are making it up as they go along. Either way, this must stop. And you can put that message out in all caps, because it cannot endure. I think we're all of us very, very nervous right now about our economic future, about the country's future. We don't need to have this kind of amateur night performance this early in the game. You can't turn around and say, well, it's still very chaotic. No, it isn't. The result of the election was pretty clear. And certainly Mark Carney made it clear he understood the meaning of the result of that election. So honestly, he's got to get his act together, and he's got to get it together much sooner rather than later.
Wow, Jim, you've kind of fallen off the Mark Carney bandwagon fairly quickly just based on
I was
this.
never really on it because the fact is, you want to give, as we say in these parts, you want to give the runner a chance. The guy won, and I always said he certainly sounded as if he knew what he was talking about. But the problem is when three of your entourage are turning around and flat out contradicting you, Aaron. You know what? I think you've got a bit of a problem there. The other thing as well, and I didn't understand this because I am not as learned in the ways of high finance as some folks, but I also saw this weekend a report that said one of the reasons that it's a smart idea to table an actual full-blown federal budget is to maintain the public and the market's trust in this government. If you're putting together an economics, it's like your book report. It's not the exam. It's just an update. This is what we're doing. We hope to be doing this or whatever. And the other suggestion as well is and that was the first impression I had, when Champagne started talking about, well, no, it won't be a budget. It'll just be an economic update. I'm thinking, what the hell do you have to hide? How bad is that deficit? We already had one surprise with the last update, which was $62 billion in terms of a deficit. How much higher is it now? And whether you do or you don't, you sure as hell sound like a bunch of people who've got something to hide. So you know what? Clear that picture up very, very quickly.
So we're not giving him any marks here, and I said this last week when it became apparent, right? When you had some new cabinet ministers speaking out, probably saying things they shouldn't have said. There's a learning curve here for this guy, right? He's not a politician. You're not cutting him any slack?
No, because the people under him are politicians. They should know better. And quite frankly, if they're treating the Prime Minister of Canada like some students might teach a substitute teacher, that they'll do what they can get away with because they know they can, we got a problem here. And if Mark Carney has a problem dealing with that, let him hire someone who's going to explain to him what he's going to have to do, and metaphorically speaking, how many legs he's going to have to break before he gets some discipline out of his caucus.
Okay. If I had to ask you, speculating, you brought up Carlos Leitao right off the top, something that surprised all of us, right? Given the fact that Carney seemed to have reached out to him personally and he ends up with no cabinet post. You think there's likely to be changes here fairly early on? Did I ask you that last week?
No, you didn't. But you know what? I really couldn't tell you. I'm getting a feeling. And once again, I began this conversation by saying I just had a feeling that something wasn't right. I have a feeling that the ghost, the administrative political ghost of Justin Trudeau is still haunting the corridors of government. That perhaps a lot of people who are in that cabinet have forgotten that Justin Trudeau is no longer the Prime Minister, and perhaps have this vision they think can be continued. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's just completely incorrect feeling on my part. But frankly, usually I've never seen a government commit this many self-inflicted errors so quickly, so soon after being elected.
Okay. Let me move on to your other headline today, which is, has Pierre Poilievre become the Liberals' biggest asset? What's he been doing? I haven't seen much of him.
Once again, he is like, for all the brush fires that are coming out, Carney and company can turn around and grab Poilievre as their sort of like political fire extinguisher, because the fact of the matter is, and more, it's being noted online, and I'm very sorry, as little as I interact with anyone online, and you know how I feel about it. The fact is, this is the Conservatives, the Canadian Conservatives, sort of like main highway of communication. It's being noticed that he can't get into the House of Commons unless he's brought in as a visitor or as a guest by one of the sitting MPs. It's being noticed that as much as he's talking about, fiscal responsibility and the importance of Canada's economy, this is a guy who is squatting. I take full responsibility for using that expression last week, but now it's caught on the net. He and his family are described as squatting at Stornoway, which is the official residence for the leader of the opposition, because he's not the leader of the opposition. He's the leader of a political party. He lost his seat in the general election, and people are pointing out, once again, they may be liberal trolls, but they're just as effective and in this particular instance, just as accurate as any conservative troll. The fact is, in an order to try and get Pierre Poilievre back into the House of Commons. It's going to cost Canadian taxpayers about $1.7 million for a by-election. So you know what? It's a little difficult for Pierre Poilievre to sort of punch above his weight on this government when all these things are hanging over his head, and quite frankly, Aaron, will be hanging over his head for the foreseeable future.
You know, Jim, I'm sensing a level of vindictiveness here. You mentioned the people now posting this on social media. Are you agreeing with this idea of him squatting? You think he should be just told, look, until and if you win, get the hell out of here?
Well, you think, let me put it to you this way. You know, there's that old saying, you know, you reap what you sow. So if you're talking to me about the guy who referred to, you know, carbon tax Carney or sellout Singh, or God knows how many other nicknames, derogatory nicknames he came up with for his political adversaries, if he's going to be referred to in the future as the Stornoway squatter, I guess, you know what? You bought that, now wear it.
I want to ask you one last thing. I wasn't planning on this, but I wonder now, have you seen Jan Arden's post, re Alberta, and the talk of referendum or separation?
No, sir.
Oh, good. I'm going to play for you now. This is from something she put on. This was on TikTok. This is Jan Arden, that same Jan Arden, Canadian singer-songwriter. Yeah. And for context, of course, Alberta, Daniel Smith talked about this. Yeah. There's now a party now drafting, I guess, a referendum on separation. It might be included for a vote. We don't know. This is her message to those Albertans, Jim. Here you go.
Hey, Alberta. Hey, a bunch of f***ing separatist wackos. How you doing? Feeling good about yourselves? You're an embarrassment to this country. Everything you have, everything that you have enjoyed, cherished, and benefited from comes from being part of one of the greatest countries on the planet. You guys have your heads so far up your ass that you obviously can't see what pricks you are. The way you are treating Indigenous people, the way you are treating your fellow citizens, your fellow Canadians, you guys are a bunch of creepy little pricks. Alberta will never separate from Canada. It's never going to happen because people like me are going to stand up, throw their shoulders back, and keep yelling and keep standing up for what I know is right. And what you guys are doing is...
It actually ends that way with a sigh. That's the end of her post. So what do you think?
I think if you haven't already received the text, you probably will. But I would say, and probably any Alberta separatist would say, good. Now, can you play the one she put out when Quebec was doing pretty much the same thing? Because the other thing, I don't know if you saw that tweet that was put out. I think it's by the Association for Albertan Independence. I forget the name of it, but they were using the Marois defense. They're saying, no, you can keep your passport. You'll keep everything. You'll keep your pension. You'll keep this. You'll keep that, blah, 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 blah. But this is it. And in many cases, when people, perhaps with a little more measured language, turn around and say, why are you people doing this? They'll turn around and say, well, where were you guys when Quebec was saying 20 times worse than we're saying right now? And have been doing it for decades, and have been shaking down the government for decades. And I'm telling you, Aaron, as much as I disagree with the idea of Alberta's independence, I can't disagree with what they're saying, because Quebec, it's, as I've said on this show hundreds of times, it is a cottage industry in Quebec shaking down Ottawa against the threat of separation. And it is only now, as you and I and many of our listeners have lived through this for half a century, that the curtain is dropping, and the great and mighty all powerful Oz is being revealed as a bunch of very elderly kind of or very kind of idealistic people who are creating this mythos that give us what we want, or the people of Quebec will rise up. The people of Quebec have made it clear they've got other things to do with their time, and maybe the people of Alberta will do the same. But quite frankly, with all due respect to Ms. Arden, as I say, if you're going to do it to everybody, because guess what? Alberta is not the only issue. Is not the only problem child in Confederation.
I will mention, though, I mean, Jan Arden is from Calgary, right? That's where she was born. Okay. So this comes from inside. Can you imagine someone in Quebec having stood up to do or say something like this?
About Alberta or Quebec?
About Quebec. A Quebecer saying this about Quebec and pushing this idea of a referendum.
We've had Quebecers. They've been dismissed as angry phones. They've been dismissed as francophobes. So, but this is the thing. But the fact of the matter is, we know, and as I say, we have learned that the fact of the matter is, it was to a large extent a lot of political bullying, which in many cases had, there was this idea that, oh my gosh, if you dare question anything we do, clear your Quebec bashing, and even that got very threadbare. So if we're seeing the same show being rerun in Alberta, although in their case it's like the first season, okay, fine, but let's face it. We've been there and we've done that. And as I say, for Jan Arden to put that out, that's fine. But the fact is, I don't know, is Alberta perceived as more an important part of Confederation to her than Quebec? Because as I say, the same conduct, the same mindset can be demonstrated on the part of many Quebec politicians as is being demonstrated now in Alberta.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, thank you.